She was supposed to be the new face of Disney Magic, a modern icon who would take the throne as the next big box office queen. Instead, she ended up sitting in a silent auditorium, staring at an empty sea of seats that should have been packed with excited fans. The irony was painful, the fallout was swift, and the once promising fairy tale turned into a cautionary tale overnight. This is the inside story of how the live-action Snow White remake crumbled into a public relations nightmare, taking careers, reputations, and Disney's wallet along for the ride. They say that in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last opening weekend. For Rachel Zegler, the star who was once hailed as the next big thing, that harsh reality set in like a brutal awakening. Social media trolls called it an expensive ghost town, film critics questioned the studio's decision-making, and Disney quietly tried to mop up the mess with as little fanfare as possible. But how did a movie with a reported $270 million budget fall so far? And why is everyone pointing fingers at the film's lead actress for driving the final nail into the coffin? Keep watching, because by the end of this story, you'll see how one of Disney's most beloved fairy tales became an unfolding drama that had nothing to do with apples or magic mirrors, and everything to do with social media missteps, behind-the-scenes clashes, and a shocking series of controversies that left audiences more stunned than entertained. You know a movie is in trouble when even Discount Tuesday can't drag people to the theater. In this case, the struggle was real. If you scrolled through Instagram or TikTok during the film's opening week, you probably saw the memes, screenshots of near-empty seating charts, videos of echoing theaters, and fan commentary that ranged from pity to outright gloating. It didn't help that the remake star, Rachel Zegler, decided to watch her own movie in a practically vacant cinema, documenting the moment on a friend's Instagram story as if it was a casual night out. The numbers didn't lie. With a lukewarm $3.5 million haul from Thursday previews and a $43 million opening weekend, the live-action Snow White wasn't just underperforming, it was missing in action. At first glance, you might think, okay, maybe it's just a slow weekend at the box office. But to put things into perspective, the much-criticized Dumbo remake had a nearly identical opening weekend total, and it cost a lot less to make. Then there's The Little Mermaid live-action adaptation, which soared to $95 million in its debut not too long ago, despite its own set of controversies. Fans took this flop as an invitation to let loose online, roasting everything from the film's promotional posters to the way the cast tried to hype it up on social media. Some joked about starting a GoFundMe to help Disney recoup its losses. Others posted comedic TikToks walking into theaters proclaiming, "Hey, can I get 2 tickets to that movie no one's watching?" It was the sort of widespread mockery a studio dreads, especially when they've sunk a massive budget into a project. Yet the real question wasn't just about the low turnout. People wanted to know why. Why did a film built on one of Disney's most legendary franchises fail so spectacularly? A big part of the answer, as it turned out, was also the face of the movie, Rachel Zegler. Because while the film itself was missing an audience, Zegler had no shortage of spotlights, most of them unflattering thanks to old video clips and controversies that would soon overshadow the entire production. But let's not forget the internet has a long memory, and what it dug up on Rachel Zegler turned this mild box office flop into a full-blown fiasco. Anyone with a social media account knows that the internet never forgets. That's especially true when you're a rising star who once delivered a bold statement about audiences lining up to see your work. In a now infamous clip, Rachel Zegler waxed poetic about how she hoped people would wait in line for her films despite her flaws and breaks. It was a heartfelt sentiment at the time, possibly even inspiring. But fast forward to the present, and that statement has become pure comedic gold for the internet. The meltdown was immediate. Influencers, critics, and everyday moviegoers replayed the clips side by side with photos of deserted movie theaters. One viral post read, "Welcome back to reality, princess," while others took the meme approach with captions like, "The only line here is the line of empty seats." It didn't help that on the same weekend, competitor films, some of them with half the marketing budget, were pulling in better numbers. Suddenly, Zegler found herself not just dealing with a disappointing film launch, but an onslaught of sarcastic commentary. The timing couldn't have been worse. Another user reposted that same clip with a snarky tagline. "Remember when she said folks would line up? Now we're lining up for the roast." The piling on didn't just sting her pride. It magnified the movie's failure, turning it into a shared pop culture punchline. But this public roast session wasn't just about schadenfreude or empty theater jokes. A larger narrative was beginning to form, one that involved internal clashes, corporate panic, and Disney executives who suddenly found themselves managing a star that had gone rogue on social media. In some ways, the fiasco of the empty theaters was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface, a much bigger storm was brewing that would involve major power plays, heated political rants, and co-star tension no one saw coming. The next part is where things really heat up. The chaos wasn't limited to online snipes. Disney's top brass was about to intervene in a way you don't often see. Behind the velvet curtains of Hollywood, damage control is an art form. Usually, studios prefer to quietly handle disputes, hush controversies, and keep their stars on a tight media leash. But in the case of Rachel Zegler, that leash was slipping fast. According to insiders, Disney executives had been uneasy for months, tracking her social media comments like hawks and bracing for impact whenever she spoke off the cuff. The first major red flag appeared at Disney's D23 Expo, a highly choreographed event where studios typically showcase their forthcoming hits to cheering fans. Zegler took the stage, initially charming everyone with bright smiles and lively banter. Then, at the tail end of her appearance, she dropped a politically charged remark that had absolutely nothing to do with the film's storyline or her character. Disney executives froze. In an instant, the brand new Snow White project, already carrying a hefty price tag, became a magnet for controversy. Conventional wisdom would suggest reining in the star, perhaps issuing a carefully worded press release to clarify her statements. Instead, Disney made a curious choice. They went silent. Multiple insiders say top brass hoped the issue would blow over, but Zegler's social media presence only intensified, leading to more heated posts that alienated segments of the audience. It wasn't long before other key players got involved. Producer Mark Platt, whose family name carries weight in Hollywood circles, allegedly flew across the country more than once to meet with Zegler personally, pleading for her to tone it down. He reminded her that this film was a massive financial gamble, one that needed broad public appeal, not political storm clouds. The actress nodded politely, but her posts kept coming, each one fanning the flames a little higher, and so Disney found itself at a crossroad: clamp down harshly and risk headlines about silencing an empowered actress, or let her run free and watch the film's prospects crash and burn. In a desperate final move, they hired a dedicated social media expert just to monitor and approve every single thing Zegler posted until the film's release. Even that measure wasn't enough. The controversies continued piling up, with each new one more incendiary than the last. While Disney scrambled behind closed doors, an even more personal clash was unfolding, one involving the film's other high-profile star and a precarious political divide that threatened everyone's safety. Co-star drama is the stuff of tabloid gold, but in this case, it escalated to a point that even seasoned Hollywood watchers found shocking. Gal Gadot, famous for her portrayal of a certain Amazonian warrior, stepped into the role of the iconic Evil Queen. At first, both actresses appeared all smiles, bonding over the excitement of reimagining a classic tale. But as the promotional tour kicked off, things got awkward, fast. It started subtly. Fans noticed a stilted vibe between them during interviews. Neither seemed willing to hype the other's performance with more than generic compliments. Then came the Oscars, where the two women presented an award together. Most viewers expected a display of sparkle and unity. Instead, they got an uneasy exchange that set the rumor mill spinning. Some described it as forced politeness, while others simply called it painful to watch. Behind the scenes, the tension was even thicker. Sources claim Zegler had posted several social media messages about a contentious global issue, leaning heavily toward one side. Gal Gadot, an Israeli native who had served in the army, became a lightning rod for backlash whenever discussions of that issue arose. These posts allegedly resulted in serious threats made against Gadot, prompting Disney to hire additional security to protect the mother of four. What really turned heads was an alleged backhanded comment Zegler made on Instagram, basically framing Gadot as a professional pageant queen who only knew how to play the PR game. Fans debated whether she meant it as a sly dig or a careless remark, but the damage was done. Gadot unfollowed Zegler on social media, if she'd even followed her in the first place, and the internet took that as confirmation of a serious rift. By the time Snow White finally limped into theaters, the co-stars appeared more like distant acquaintances than two leading ladies of a major motion picture. Zegler wrote a long, emotional Instagram post thanking everyone from costume designers to lighting technicians, carefully detailing how each person had changed her life. Notably missing any mention of Gal Gadot. If this was a coincidence, it was a glaring one. If it was deliberate, it spoke volumes. But even casting drama and social media slip-ups aren't the only reasons audiences turned their backs on this reimagined fairy tale. Another controversy, a deeply rooted one, began long before cameras even started rolling. Recasting Snow White as a Latina actress was bound to spark opinions, both positive and negative. In some corners of social media, the news was celebrated as a progressive step forward. Elsewhere, critics grumbled that Disney was disregarding the original character's established look. Rachel Zegler wasn't the first actress to face such backlash. Halle Bailey had a similarly heated reception when she was cast as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Still, Zegler seemed determined not to let the haters go unchecked. In a now-deleted post, she fired back at her critics, saying, "Yes, I am Snow White. No, I am not bleaching my skin for the role." She went on to call out what she described as losers obsessed with keeping a cartoon princess's bloodline pure, effectively labeling those opposed to the casting as backward and out of touch. Her defenders praised her for standing up against prejudice. Her detractors accused her of inflaming tensions and insulting fans who had genuine concerns about deviating too far from the source material. Things took a turn for the worse when Zegler publicly shared her thoughts on the original 1937 animated film, calling the romance with Prince Charming weird and borderline stalkery. She later clarified that the remake would take a more modern approach to Snow White's autonomy, but the internet latched onto her initial wording. Dedicated Disney purists saw it as a slap in the face to the beloved original. Before audiences ever saw a single frame of the film, the issue of how Disney would handle the Seven Dwarfs took center stage. Enter Peter Dinklage, an Emmy-winning actor celebrated for pushing boundaries and portraying complex characters. He made waves when he called out Disney for what he considered a hypocritical stance, on the one hand celebrating a Latina Snow White, on the other continuing a storyline featuring dwarfs that he saw as dated and offensive. During a guest appearance on a popular podcast, Dinklage didn't pull punches. He essentially blasted Disney for patting itself on the back for casting a person of color while still making that backward story about seven dwarfs living in a cave. The bluntness of his remarks was jarring, and fans were split on how to respond. Some praised him for speaking up, arguing that Disney needed to modernize every aspect of the tale if they were going to modernize one. Others argued that he was robbing roles from actors with dwarfism who rarely get the chance to appear in big-budget films. Disney scrambled to respond, releasing a statement that assured everyone they were taking a different approach to the dwarfs and had consulted with members of the dwarfism community. Rumors swirled that the film would replace the dwarfs with magical creatures or heavily rely on CGI. When early images leaked showing photorealistic, computer-generated dwarfs, the backlash was swift and merciless. Fans called the designs soulless and creepy, complaining that they lacked the charm and expressiveness of the original characters. From that point on, every announcement about the film's progress attracted immediate scrutiny. It didn't help that Zegler, already under the microscope for her own controversies, didn't speak up in a unified way about this dwarfs debate. Disney was left with the worst of both worlds. They'd replaced a beloved, iconic aspect of Snow White, but alienated a portion of the dwarfism community for potentially erasing roles, all while failing to satisfy those demanding a respectful modernization. But if you think the studio might try to counteract this negative PR with a massive red carpet extravaganza, think again. What they ended up doing next signaled a different plan entirely. Traditionally, Disney spares no expense for a grand premiere, rolling out the red carpet for the cast, crew, and an army of excited fans. For a project as iconic as Snow White, you'd expect a glitzy Hollywood event, perhaps even complete with dwarfs in some capacity, or magical backdrops for epic photo ops. But the reality was something else entirely. Instead of a star-studded spectacle, Disney held a tame daytime gathering with minimal press coverage, followed by a screening at the historic El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. It felt more like a required formality than a celebration. Industry observers immediately questioned why Disney was holding back. Was it a lack of confidence in the film? Or an attempt to avoid turning the premiere into a magnet for protests and unwelcome questions about controversies? Whatever the reason, fans noticed, social media lit up with commentary such as, "Where's the big event? Are they ashamed of this movie?" Even more telling was the European premiere, which was quietly arranged at a northern Spanish castle far from London's usual hype-filled Leicester Square. This uncharacteristic low profile seemed tailor-made to dodge critics, protesters, and any potential fiasco. Instead of generating excitement, the hush-hush approach only fueled speculation that Disney was bracing for negative headlines. At that point, it wasn't just the dwarfs debate or Rachel Zegler's political posts weighing the film down. It was a perfect storm of controversies, each one spotlighting a different problem. An actress at odds with her co-star, a questionable rewriting of a classic fairy tale, a studio unsure about its own marketing strategy, and an audience that had grown skeptical, if not downright hostile, toward the entire project. When opening weekend arrived, the movie's performance at the box office confirmed the worst fears. With a reported production budget of $270 million, plus additional marketing costs, industry experts labeled the film a likely financial fiasco from day one. The few who did see it were greeted by half-hearted applause and a swirl of online drama overshadowing the cinematic experience. Now, after the dust has settled and the blame game is in full swing, it's time to step back and ask, how did one of Disney's most treasured classics transform into such a monumental cautionary tale? When Walt Disney first introduced Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937, it was a groundbreaking achievement that mesmerized audiences and set the stage for the brand's magical future. Decades later, a live-action remake should have been a nostalgic triumph, ready to capture a new generation and delight old fans alike. Instead, it became a sinkhole for Disney's finances and a cautionary lesson in how easily corporate dreams can crumble when controversy, politics, and mismatched creative visions collide. From Rachel Zegler's ill-timed comments and political tangles to behind-the-scenes tensions with Gal Gadot, the path to release was rife with friction. Add in the dwarfs debate sparked by Peter Dinklage, a muted premiere that signaled Disney's lack of confidence and an overall sense that the film was straining under too many agendas, and you get a recipe for disaster. The result? A box office flop that has people asking whether Disney can still deliver the enchantment it once promised. Maybe the lesson here is that nostalgia has limits, or that consumers are increasingly wary when a studio tries to reinvent a classic while dismissing the very charm that made it timeless. Whatever your take, one thing's for certain. This live-action Snow White will go down as one of Disney's most talked-about remakes, and not for the right reasons. Is there any chance for redemption? In Hollywood, anything is possible. But for now, audiences are left to pick through the wreckage of controversy and disappointment, wondering how a movie meant to celebrate Disney's oldest princess became one of the biggest cautionary tales in modern filmmaking. Let us know what you think. Did Disney invite this chaos, or did the internet and media spin it out of control? Did Rachel Zegler's outspoken nature doom the film, or was it just one piece of a larger puzzle? Share your thoughts, and if you're curious about more behind-the-scenes drama surrounding Snow White's cast, crew, and controversies, stick around, because this story is far from over.